I'm going to try and balance the Zoom picture along with my own copy of the agenda. So I'm going back and forth. So ignore all of that stuff that's going on. Plus, it's a little less distracting. If you are an attorney and are attending, I will let you know that this program has one continuing legal education credit through the State Bar. So please just shoot me over your State Bar number and we'll make sure you get a credit. And if we can think of any others, just let me know. We're working on DOH. We continue to work on DOH and well, we will get there eventually. They're a little bit slower than the State Bar. Let's launch into what's going on nationally. Other than the fact that everybody's hurting nationally, the Safe Banking Act was placed into the next COVID relief bill with the House now, which is encouraging. It's very encouraging. We don't have there's not a big hope that it will actually pass, but it's still encouraging. It will probably pass the House. It most likely will die in the Senate, where a lot of things, House initiatives seem to die. There's like a graveyard there, I swear, of House initiatives. So it's hopeful. We have a lot of people on our side, but it's still not going to be a possibility for a while. But that does say that as we become an essential industry, we have a lot more voice, both nationally as well as with our own state. As for the state legislature, everything obviously is on hold. There is rumor that there will be a special session. It looks like it'll probably be end of June, and it will all be concentrated on how to make up that budget shortfall. Well, let's see. LCB is started to get busy. So the LCB has a webinar for industry around enforcement on May 21st. They sent out an announcement on Wednesday. We'll get it up our own website in case you lose that announcement, but that's all going to be about enforcement topics. They're starting the rulemaking, so they figured out public comment on rulemaking. True party of interest public comment starts. It will be on May 20th via webcast. We have that on the website, so if you lost that notice, just go to our website. We'll keep that updated. Voluntary compliance program. The public comment will be on May 28th. They haven't announced that webcast. As soon as they do, we'll get that up on the website as well. The governor's office put out the retail requirements for phase 2, and most of our retailers already follow what is required from the governor, which is 30% capacity of your stores, cloth masks for employees, encouraging your customers to also wear cloth masks, limiting hours for high-risk individuals, keeping the 6-foot distance between customers and staff, frequent sanitizing, and then monitoring staff for signs of illness. On my various, Laura, no, there are no updates on the QA rules yet. So that is still in the mix. Good question, Laura. And you guys can shoot me questions on the chat box. It's fine. And then obviously monitoring staff for illnesses. And on my visits to the various dispensaries, I've been very impressed on how we've already gone above and beyond the governor's requirements. So congrats. And I think this is a really positive sign. And I will also keep you guys updated if there are any other LCB updates around the rulemaking on anything else. I'm going to turn the time over to Caitlin, and she's going to talk about what the board is doing these days. Let's unmute Caitlin. There we go.
Hello, everybody. The board's been working on quite a few things. One of the things that we have spearheaded here is a roundtable with leadership of all of the organizations in Washington State. So a few weeks ago, we had a large meeting with WACA, Washington Cannabis Association, WSIA, which is Sun Growers, and the new Craft Cannabis Group. And the four of us have started talking about ways that we can together create a more unified industry voice. And I think that's really positive. Other than a beginning, that's all I have to report, but it is an exciting beginning. I think that hopefully we'll be able to really make a difference, particularly legislatively in 2021. So that's great. Another thing that I need to announce is our board is ready to elect some new members. So at this time on the website we have up, and I don't know, Kristen, if you're able to put that on the screen.
On the website, what do you need?
Just the application for running for the board, or how to nominate.
Okay, yes, I will get that up right now.
Awesome.
That's on Survey Monkey. Sorry.
Yeah, and
Go for
so
it.
every year we have incredible elections. It's always a situation where we have more extraordinary qualified people putting themselves up for nomination, or other people encouraging them. And so I would encourage all of you, especially if you've been on a committee or worked on a special project in the last couple of years, and you're looking for a way to have an even bigger influence. This is a great opportunity to kind of join our team, and we work very collaboratively, and we want to see all the talent that the Cannabis Alliance represents, and that's you guys. So looking forward to seeing those nominations coming in.
And I will get that up in 1 second. Do you want to talk about the job board too?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we have been looking at ways that we can support our industry in this really difficult time, since we have no access to any of the grants that are out there. We're looking at ways that we can do our best to take care of one another. So we have 2 ways that we're doing that. We're working on a third, but 2 ways that are available right now. And that is, we have a Buy Nothing Facebook page where you can either make requests of things that you need, or post things up that you have that you think might be useful to other people. And this can run the gamut. It's not business specific. If it's a personal need even, or, you know, like I discovered I had some old ink for a printer I no longer owned. And so I put it up on a Buy Nothing page and said, I have this ink. And then somebody in my neighborhood said, oh, we need that, especially with homeschooling. And they just came and picked it up from my porch. So that's kind of the concept. Now, obviously, I shouldn't have to say this, but just in case, of course, you know that we may not exchange weed via the Buy Nothing page, right? Just as a friendly reminder. Also, the second way that we have is a job board. So it's going to be a great clearinghouse once everybody starts putting their stuff in, of jobs that are available or seeking jobs, and that is through the website. So the Buy Nothing page is on Facebook, and the job board is on our website.
And the Buy Nothing page has, I put that thing in the chat box.
Perfect.
And then if you're a member and you want to post a job, please log in, and it should be right on the member bulletin board area. But if not, we can walk you through. So it's pretty simple, and it's free for members to post. Mm-hmm. And here is the job board. Sorry. Of course, right now my mouse died, so everything has to be done the hard way.
Well, so in the meantime, I'll just fill in the board for the most part right now is focused on kind of getting us regrouped after the legislative session, and then and looking forward to what initiatives we need to be working on now so that we are ready and prepared for next year. And then obviously finding ways to support our community through COVID, which is advocacy for better banking, access to in some of the funds. Hopefully in this new proposal, there might be something that gets through for us, but that's primarily been our focus. I've been watching and I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have any, feel free to send them my way.
We've also been pushing with the state, since we know the feds are going to be a little bit hesitant about giving us any support. We've been really pushing with the state, especially with the governor's office and the Department of Commerce, to access funds for our industry grants, loans, lower interest loans we've currently been getting, just to give support. I know that a lot of people have really been expending a lot of money in creating safer working environments during this crisis. So we have continually hammering on our legislators, on our governor, and on the Department of Commerce that we really need this assistance. So we'll keep you updated whenever we can find out something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you. A couple other things that we've been working on in terms of the Alliance is we've been working on a vape packaging, vape and concentrates to create a consistent packaging request. One of our members was kind of dinged on their packaging, and when they went out to the rest of the industry, we noticed that vape packaging and concentrate packaging all don't necessarily meet the child-proof requirements. And so we would like to go back together to work as a group to come out with a consistent rules. So I will send out an email by Monday for an invitation for our next meeting. And if you don't get it, please let me know. And then also, members were sent a survey about our upcoming legislative agenda. So please complete that survey. And if you didn't get it, please contact me because it was sent out to members and the latest COVID update. And we are trying to just prepare for the upcoming legislative session. We know that we really have to concentrate on bringing in more revenue into the state because for obvious reasons, that is what they're going to be looking for, and that's what they're going to be concentrating on. So please fill out that survey and let us know how you think around this. Take it away, guys.
Thanks. Hi, this is Matthew, and I'm going to speak first and kind of actually do a share screen so I can show you guys some slides. And I'm actually going to run Mary's slides for her also once we get to her portion. But so yeah, you know, obviously, as Kristen had talked about, you guys are already very, most of you, deep in living this sort of response to the COVID or coronavirus. Because of being essential businesses here in Washington. But what I want to talk about, I think in my first part and kind of share some resources is just kind of formalizing that into a written plan that you can use to, you know, kind of continue to protect your business and your employees. So obviously a lot of this isn't going to be new information, but I think as we move into the next phases, there is going to be a kind of a need to formalize this stuff. You know, as was in the retail outlines, they're looking for some kind of a written procedure. So once I get done with my presentation, I'll share a link to a Google Drive that I've started that there's a template in there of actually a kind of a written COVID plan to get you started. And then some other resources that I've found that you might find helpful also. So I'll just kind of go through this pretty quickly. You know, I think we're all finding out that, you know, we need to be prepared for these kind of things. I know, you know, I don't know if anybody watches some of the stuff on Netflix or The Explained. I had just watched the thing about pandemics not long before this started. So, you know, with the world that we live in and people traveling the way that they do and these potentials for, you know, viruses to come out of nature and into contact with humans is going to continue to be there. So just like the other safety plans that you might have for your business, I think this is another way to protect your customers, protect your employees, and as always, protect your investment. Kind of some key areas of the response plan you want to make sure you're covering is, you know, who's responsible for what, how you're preparing and preventing exposures, the protective measures within your workplace, the kind of personal protective equipment you need to have on hand, those cleaning and disinfecting practices, exposures and responses, which I think are one of the areas where we haven't gotten really enough guidance even now. And then of course, record keeping and documentation, which is always important. clearly laying out who's kind of responsible for what. I mean, obviously employees do have some responsibility in all of this, and they need to make sure that they're following the guidelines that are provided. But it is important to also know that, you can't, if an employee has a concern about the safety environment or the health environment, it's against the law to retaliate or discriminate or really not take that complaint seriously. So it's another good reason to kind of have this in place so that you can show the staff that you're taking this seriously. And like I said, from the management side, also make sure that they're leading by example. So if you're asking your staff to wear a mask, it's probably a good idea to wear a mask, and make sure that everybody is living and enforcing that plan that you put together. Like I said, I think you guys are all pretty familiar with the kind of controls and things that need to be in place, so I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about that. But be specific is really important when you're putting together these plans. That's something that's come up in a couple of different webinars I've listened to with different lawyers, different work comp programs in different states where they have private insurers, and a wide range of how this is being perceived. If anything gets to a point where you're going to have to fight something or deal with something, the more you can document, the more you can show specific how many times a day. And, for the purpose of making sure it's clear, if if your version of frequent is 10 times a day, make sure people know that, so that they're not doing it 3 times a day thinking they're meeting the need. Again, a lot of the general rules, and I think everybody's pretty aware of all this stuff or has certainly had to kind of follow this by now. But just remember to keep it up. I think there's a feeling out there because it's become so tedious that there isn't the same risk, and maybe there is and maybe there isn't, but it's not a time to really slack, especially when it comes to things like common areas and cleaning, just the kind of places where there's a big potential for some kind of spread to still happen. All the different kind of cleaning and disinfecting routines that you would want to have. And like I said, be specific in the frequency that you're asking folks to do things. And then of course, PPE, still difficult to get, seems to be a little bit better, but I think, just any kind of a common face coverings and, they're important. So I know it's becoming controversial in some places, but to me, it seems like one of the ways that we can accelerate getting out of this. And I think that's something our industry has to deal with. That is delivery and the way delivery tends to work, which counting products, being in the back rooms, being in offices, being in enclosed spaces. These are things you want to consider too, and how you're protecting those drivers, how those drivers are not going to potentially spread the disease to a bunch of different places in the same day. So nobody wants to really be responsible. So having good practices around cleaning the insides of the vehicles, cleaning between drivers, maybe staying, not doing some of the stuff you normally would do and maybe waiting in the car, those are going to be things for you to decide, but be aware. I used to do deliveries. I've been crammed in the room with folks, and, just be aware of that potential. And then visitors coming into the facility. I'm sure a lot of growers obviously have a lot of awareness of what a couple of bugs off of somebody's clothes can potentially do. You got to think in the same kind of way, and try to keep out unnecessary folks, or make sure that they don't, have any symptoms or aren't showing anything that would bring that into your facility, especially if you've been able to keep it all, out this long. These are some guidelines that are in the plan that I'll provide to you guys all. And I kind of took this from some things I could find online, some written plans. And so these are just some ideas. L&I, OSHA, they don't really go so far as to give you clear guidance on what to do if employees exhibit different kinds of symptoms or situations. And I think that's, going to vary. The general response I've heard to just about everything is it's all case by case. But, I think that's the fear, is what happens if, or what do you do as an employer if you have an employee that exhibits symptoms, who tests positive and has been working, or, is in close contact with somebody. So I'm not going to go into all this because I'm going to share all this with you guys, but these are some guidelines that they started with the construction industry, but I've kind of looked around. So just to kind of give you maybe some ideas of what you might want to do or put into a plan for your own business. And then record keeping is always good. Right now, OSHA, for terms of work-related injuries and all that, and Mary's going to talk a lot more about the work comp and who might be eligible for those type of things. They're not treating it like the general flu or cold, which would kind of exclude it from being a workplace-related anything. So there is that potential, and I know Mary will talk more about who they think will likely be eligible to make those kinds of claims. But just like anything, it's always really good. The more records that you have, training, etc., it's going to always be to your benefit. And like I said, there are some resources that out there. I know it can be overwhelming and difficult to kind of try to find a unified set. So when I get done here, I'm going to drop a link, like I said, to a Google Drive that has some flyers in there. It has a plan template and some a copy of this presentation too. So there are these kind of links that you can also take a look at. So I'll see does anybody have any questions about that?
I have a question. So there is no clear guidance to what happens when you have an employee who may have been exposed, and what is the employer's responsibility? I mean, if you have a delivery person, they could potentially be, I mean, there is no contact tracing. How are we handling all of this?
Yeah, I mean, and Mary maybe speak a little bit more. I mean, they aren't really right now. It's kind of tough. I mean, I think everybody's sort of in that spot where I don't think the regulators really know exactly what the answer is. Typically with an illness or these kind of things that can't be linked to necessarily one specific incident that happens at an employer, if you cut your hand at work, then it's clearly happened at work. But if you get carpal tunnel over a lifetime of work, it's really difficult to file a work comp claim. Now, I know Mary's going to talk about, what they've seen in terms of who are probably going to be able to file a work comp claim. As an essential business, cannabis is probably going to be in a different category than a lot of folks are, but really it's going to be on the employee to prove that they got it at work and not somewhere else for it to be their employer's responsibility. But to go further than that, then they say it's all case by case basis. But generally speaking, it is the employee's responsibility to say this, to somehow prove that it happened at work. And your best defense as an employer is to be able to say, well, here's all the ways we're preventing it from happening from work. Educating employees on not coming to work when they're sick, having a sick policy. I mean, there's things you need to do on your side to make sure that you can actuate these things. But at the end of the day, these are why it's going to be a little bit tough. But I know Mary will talk more about the specifics of that part of it.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
And sorry about getting your name, your firm wrong, Mary.
It's okay. So yeah, if there's no more questions for me, I'm gonna leave my screen up to do Mary's slides, but I am done talking. I'll let Mary start.
Hello.
I think Mary has to unmute. There you go.
Yep. So my name is Mary Levinson. I'm an attorney with Imes, Tedrow, and Ladenburg, and my practice is in workers' comp defense. I don't know how much exposure you folks have to workers' comp, how much you know about it, but I thought that what I would do is just go through some very basic concepts of workers' comp, and then talk a little bit about what guidance the department has given as far as how they're going to be handling COVID-19 claims. So if you want to go to the next screen, please. So there are two kinds of workers' compensation claims that you can have. And the first kind is an industrial injury. And Matthew kind of alluded to this. This is something where something specific intangible happens to you at work. It's on a specific occasion, something that can be identified. And that I put the statutory definition up there. The definition is long and looks complicated, but basically if something happens to a worker at work that injures them and that they need medical treatment for, it will probably count as an industrial injury. And some of the things that are included are things that you would be surprised by. They wouldn't seem like something of a traumatic nature, like bending over to pick up a paper clip and you blow a disc in your back. That would be covered as an industrial injury. Basically an exposure to the coronavirus at work, if you have a known exposure at work to someone, obviously who you know has tested positive, that exposure could be considered an industrial injury, a specific incident. And if you do have an industrial injury, you need to file your claim within 1 year of the time of the injury, or you're not able to, your claim cannot be allowed. You want to go on to the next slide, please? Next slide, please, Matthew. I can't hear you. It's not going. The next kind of allowable claim is, my slides are not going, but it's called an occupational disease claim. And this is, Matthew also alluded to this, it's something like carpal tunnel condition, a repetitive type injury. There we go. That results in a need for medical care. And it's to have something count as an occupational disease, it has to be something for which you are at increased risk based on your job tasks. And it does not include exposures found in everyday life or all employments in general. So for example, if you have a foot condition from walking too much, it probably would not be allowable as a workers' compensation claim, because people walk in all jobs and in everyday life in general. So it has to be something that is tied more closely to your job than to everyday life or everything. So most coronavirus cases, as Matthew alluded to, would probably be occupational disease cases, because considering community spread, it's unlikely that a lot of the people who ultimately test positive are able to identify a specific exposure that has led to the problem. So occupational disease claims kind of don't have a statute of limitations. The statute of limitations in the statute is so broad that nobody ever fails to file a claim with in a timely manner, because you have 2 years from the time a doctor tells you in writing that your problem is occupational and you should file a claim. So once you have an allowed workers' compensation claim, whether it's for an injury or for an occupational disease, this is a list of the kind of benefits that you can get. You get time loss compensation for time that you missed from work as a result of your condition. And that starts out 60% of the wages for a single worker, 65% for workers who are married. And for each child up to 5 rather, you get 2%. So if you're married and you have 5 children, I guess you get, what, 75% of your wages. The next benefit is, are you not hearing me? Can you hear me?
It's a little garbled, but did we lose her, or did I get lost? There we go.
Can you hear me again?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Sorry for the garbling here. So you get medical benefits for an allowed claim for your condition. You're supposed to use providers who are in the department network, which is fairly extensive. And you must have medical support in order to have an allowable claim. So when you file your claim, you have to have a medical provider supporting that your condition is related to your job. You also have the possibility of vocational retraining if you have restrictions related to your occupational disease that prevent you from returning to the job of injury. And when your condition has resolved, that it's going to, you could end up with a permanent partial impairment award. Like if you lose some percentage of the function of a part of your body, let's say in a COVID case, your respiratory system is permanently affected, you could get a monetary award based on that. And if you're not able to return to gainful employment as a result of your claim-related condition, lifetime pensions are available. Although as employers, we're not fond of that option, but it does happen fairly frequently. So most employers, and I assume most of you folks, are insured through the state fund. The alternative is to be self-insured, and that's primarily large employers who do that. So for state fund claims, the Department of Labor and Industries, you pay premiums to the Department of Labor and Industries. They make claim decisions. They make all the decisions about whether your claim is allowed or not, although you do have input. You can weigh in, but the decision is made by the department educator. And employers are classified in groups based on the risk of injury in their industry. And then the Department of Labor and Industries collects premiums and pays the benefits. Next slide, please. So again, as I said, if a worker identifies a specific exposure that happened at work that causes them to develop COVID-19, they would have an industrial injury. They would need to file within 1 year. They would then be eligible for the benefits that I talked about earlier. In looking at, and also this is a strict liability situation. If you are in the course of your employment and you have an injury, you are covered. It doesn't have to be related to work necessarily. It's a strict liability thing. There is no consideration of fault, like did your employer do a bad job keeping you safe? If you have even if the worker is doing something stupid but they're injured at work, they would be covered. So that's something to keep in mind as well. For an occupational disease, which again is going to be most of the COVID-19 cases, it is unclear whether people in your industry will be covered or not. The questions that are going to be asked: is there an increased risk of exposure to the problem due to the job? And would the worker have been exposed if not for the job? And can a specific source be identified? And as Matthew said, these are considered on a case-by-case basis. Certainly for healthcare workers who have pretty intensive exposure to COVID-19 at their work, it's likely that they're going to be covered. For people in a retail setting like you folks, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think that it will be, again, on a case-by-case basis, and it could go either way. Would you go to the next slide, please? So here are some factors that are going to be relevant to whether a particular person is covered or not. Again, as I just said, healthcare workers and first responders are very likely to be covered because they're going to have multiple documented exposures in the course of their work. And they're also going to have more concentrated exposure than other people. So they're going to be in an environment that has a lot of the coronavirus. It's more likely that they're going to be, that it will be found that their work is likely the result of their exposure is likely the result of their work. Certainly safety procedures at a job site that Matthew was talking about are going to be relevant in a retail setting, trying to decide, is it more likely that the person was exposed at work, or is it likely that or might they just as easily have been exposed somewhere else? An interesting twist, typically in exposure to infectious diseases, it's not found to be work-related, and it's often found that the exposure is incidental to the work. So like if you have a coworker who has tuberculosis or something, who you have contact with that person while you're at your job, you would not have a covered, it would not be covered as an occupational disease because it's just coincidental that you happen to have that contact with the person at work, not as a result of the job task that you were doing. And that's what, the same reasoning is why normally the flu and colds and things of that nature are not covered as occupational diseases. So if you have a worker who does test positive or gets COVID-19, part of what will be investigated is the person's exposures outside of work. So if they have family members that have tested positive, other people that they have contact with that have tested positive, those would be relevant to the investigation. And the worker's activities outside work would be relevant. If you had someone who comes to work in your establishment and goes home and never leaves their house the rest of the time, then it would increase the likelihood that whatever exposure they had occurred in their job, since you do have members of the public coming in and there's community spread of the virus. So it is on a case-by-case basis. There are a lot of facts that could play into whether something is covered or not. There are a couple of things. Could we go to the next slide? There are a couple of things that some guidance that the Department of Labor and Industry has put out that are specific to COVID-19 and not typical workers' comp issues. Workers can get time loss benefits during a period of time that they are in a mandatory quarantine, even if they ultimately test negative. If they do test negative, they may not need to file a claim, but they can get that coverage. And the most important factor for you to be aware of, the department is now saying that COVID-19 cases will not affect employers' experience ratings. And that is huge because your experience rating has a massive impact on the premiums that you have to pay. And some of the people that have COVID-19, obviously, their care can get very expensive, so their claims can be very expensive. So this is a little bit of a break that you get because of the nature of the pandemic. So those are the remarks that I have prepared. The next slide. I've provided contact information for me. If you have questions specifically that you don't want to ask right now, you can feel free to contact me if things come up later as time goes by. I have to say, in our practice, in my firm, we haven't had any COVID-19 cases yet, which is a little bit surprising, considering that we do work with a lot of retail establishments and grocery stores and healthcare institutions. But I guess part of the answer is that Washington State has been doing a really good job on social distancing and on maintaining safety. So following the advice that Matthew gave about keeping your workers safe and keeping your establishment clean, it seems to be working, and I'm hopeful that it will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mary. Unfortunately, from the wilds of Kirkland, that some of that is garbled, but we'll share the PowerPoint to the rest of the group. And you know, Kirkland is a long way.
Well, apologies for the garbling. I haven't had a problem before, so I don't know if I've done something
No,
abnormal here.
it's just the nature of the beast these days. I think everybody and their mother's on Zoom, and it's, everybody's bandwidth is being sucked up by. My husband and I fight over bandwidth every day, every single day.
Well,
thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. If there are specific areas that are particularly garbled, let me know, and I can maybe either write a quick something to summarize that, or we can work at some other way to get the information in an understandable form.
Perfect. Thank you. I will go back and look at it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mary. And we'll make sure that the most PowerPoints are available up on the website. Jerry Whiting, are you ready to talk about hemp?
Hey there. So
Hey
what
there.
I'll do is give a quick update. Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I would like to give a quick update about hemp, both here in Washington State, but more importantly around the country. It's been impacted by COVID-19, but the real background is a little bit different than that. So I have a company called LeBlanc C&E. I write the monthly hemp column for Northwest Leaf. I'm writing a book, the Hemp Farmer's Almanac, to request a Project CBD, and I grow hemp and make hemp-based medicine. So before COVID-19, I thought I had a pretty good crystal ball as to where the industry was and where it was headed. The problem is hemp is more than just CBD. It's the tip of the iceberg. Until Charlotte Figi and all that stuff, Sanjay Gupta's special, hemp was associated with food, fuel, fiber, and other things. So there's been this bloom of interest in industrial hemp, but it's really just the beginning. The CBD market has collapsed. The number of licenses issued between 2018 and 2019 was, an increase of like 450%. Most states allowed hemp cultivation with no ceiling. People went crazy. The problem is there's a lot of inventory in the channel, whether it's biomass, flower, distillate, isolate, tincture, everything else. There are literally tons sitting unsold. As a result, prices are in the toilet. For example, 15 months ago, smokable hemp, let's call the quality, good material coming out of Oregon, organically grown, no pesticides, no heavy metals. I was paying $80 a pound. When last year's harvest came in September, October, the prices started at 30 to 25 and went down. So that's just big totes of biomass. But as a result, in my opinion, there's literally no reason for most people to grow generic industrial hemp for CBD extraction this summer. So I've been working with African-American farmers in the South, let's see, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and other states like North Carolina and Hawaii. Compared to the rules and regs implemented by the various departments of agriculture, Washington has a commendable system. There's a low barrier to entry. The licensing fees are very reasonable. There's no certified seed list yet. There probably will be, and I'm sitting on the fence. There's pros and cons that I'll save for a white paper. But really, in the end, if you're involved in the hemp industry in Washington State, there's no drama, there's no politics. It's really pretty much smooth sailing. My goal on behalf of the Cannabis Alliance is to act as a liaison to the Department of Ag and to think beyond summer 2020, looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and to guide the regulatory process in the direction most beneficial to our community. The Farm Bill, aka the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, signed in December 20th of 2018, is pretty CBD centric. It assumes that you're growing flower for the medical use. And as a result, the individual states' rules and regs are, as approved by the USDA, assume you're growing hemp to make medicine. By that, I mean they're obsessed with the THC level, where it's delta 9 or total THC, and how it's measured, et cetera, et cetera. It's this very tightly controlled thing that assumes hemp is for CBD, and that needs to be controlled vis-a-vis THC. I think we're going to see the industry consolidate. I know a lot of people in Oregon who grew last year, for example, are not coming back. They have a barn full. But you're going to see food, fuel, fiber. We're talking paper making, hempcrete, a whole lot of other uses gain traction, and therefore farmers will grow what the market will buy. This means there's going to be a disconnect between the existing CBD-centric THC as the boogeyman kind of infrastructure to something that is a little bit different. I'm growing outdoors this year, and I'm growing half for medicine and half for fiber. I used the stems and stalks from last year to pull the bast, the outer bark, from the hurd, the inner part, and worked with paper makers. The interesting thing I found in my research is the best quality fiber comes from hemp plants before they flower. So one of the things as fiber takes hold in Washington State, right now the Department of Ag comes out 15 days before your projected harvest date, does a pre-harvest inspection to make sure that the flower has less than 0.3 THC. What if I'm harvesting for fiber and I don't have flower because the best fiber comes from pre-flower? Will there be a provision for a visual inspection on site which will not require a lab test because there's no trichomes, there's no cannabinoids in a pre-flowered hemp plant, and there'll be a divergence in the way ag approaches the various markets that hemp is grown for. It also, I mentioned the idea of a certified seed list. Because there's been this 75-year hiatus in hemp cultivation in the US, there is no certified seed list. EU has one, Canada has one. The politics around the genetics are a whole other kettle of fish. But I do think there needs to be provisions for the various types of hemp grown. For example, I want to grow a seed crop of a hemp cultivar that I have that is a feral Chinese hemp strain. I'm interested in it for a number of reasons, and I had it genetically sequenced by Phylos Bioscience last year. Now, in their galaxy, the 3D representation of where the genome of a particular cultivar lies within the whole Cannabis sativa L family, hemp is color-coded yellow. Sizzle the Engine, named after my son, Sizzle the Engine came back yellow in the middle of the rest of the cloud of CBD genetics. Problem was, when it flowered and I had it tested, it came back 1-to-1 at 2% THC, 2% CBD. Now, the argument from my point of view is genetically, this is hemp. It meets all the requirements. The 0.3 THC is a artificial legal construct. So here's the deal. I want to use Sizzle the Engine for the fiber because it was nicknamed Jack in the Beanstalk when we were first popping the seeds. I don't want it to flower, but I do want to grow a seed crop, or I'm growing a medical strain that has high whatever, but I'm going to harvest it legally before, because I'm going to test myself before I call ag. There needs to be an option as long as we're stuck with this taxonomically irrelevant 0.3 delta 9 THC, because THC gets you stoned and it's evil mindset. There need to be exceptions. Last point, not all hemp seeds are feminized, and some are going to be monoecious, and we're going to have male and female flowers on the same plant. Why? Because those cultivars have higher production for grain, for oil or food, and by oil I mean hemp oil, nutritional, not CO2 CBD oil. So if you're going for grain or for the fiber, including especially the hurd, you want monoecious plants. You want male and female flowers on the same plants. Guess what? That pollen is going to fly. So pollen drift is going to be an issue that needs to be resolved within the whole canna family, whether you're growing recreational THC type 1 plants or you're growing uber type 3 0 THC hemp plants. When this stuff, now there's nationalized and legalized, is grown on tractors, there will be pollen drift. And this needs to be addressed before it's regulated and legislated. So as a community, those of us that grow recreational THC reefer or grow hemp for whatever reasons need to come up with a sheep and cattle truce and an understanding based on wind patterns, seasons, cultivars, whatever. But we need to do it before it's imposed on us. So the lockdown has me stuck at home. I'd like to, I'm the kind of guy who does face-to-face, and I actually did lobbying in Olympia years and years ago for digital signature legislations when I used to do software and crypto. So I've done that lobbying game in Olympia. And I worked on a city thing for 4 years, high-tech consulting for the city of Seattle. Anyway, it's hard getting stuff done, and I haven't had a chance to do the outreach with the ag people. But my modest goal is to develop best practices and to get ag's buy-in before they impose constraints that we're going to find hamper the industry. And again, seed list now, no. Eventually, inevitable. That's all I have to say. Jerry Whiting, leblancini@gmail.com. I don't know if there are any questions, but there you go.
Jerry, do you want to run your slides, or did you not need the slides?
Oh, did I not share the screen? Shit. Sorry.
I'll put them up on the website. You're precious.
Oh, my mind was somewhere else. I apologize. The slides will be.
So how would we as an industry work on the pollen drift issue? I mean, I see that over and over and over again happening. So is it sitting down with the Hemp Association and saying, okay, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you get to drift pollen, and on Tuesday, Thursday, we get to drift pollen?
So honestly, I work with hemp farmers all over the country, from Hawaii to the Carolinas and Florida. So this is a big, big deal. And there's a discussion about the type of cannabis sativa L that is grown where. Excuse me. And some of it is terrain and weather patterns and existing farms, and some of it is geopolitical and cultural. By that I mean, California is cannabis for pot. California is like never going to be unseated for that. And so there's going to be pushback for having people get on tractors and grow a bunch of hemp in the Emerald Triangle. It just isn't going to fly, nor should it, because the terroir, the land doesn't lend itself to tractors and big ass farms like that. On the other hand, believe it or not, the existing big ag states from the Carolinas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those that grow the big three, corn, soybeans, and wheat, those states are primed. Because if people don't go back to eating as much meat after the pandemic lockdown and the slaughterhouses, if it shifts a little bit, you're going to see farmers planting what they can sell. And if you're not growing corn for hogs or for feedlots for cows, you're going to have to grow something else. And if the export domestic market changes balance because of trade and supply chain issues, they're going to look for alternatives. And flat terrain, tractors, 4-H, county extension agents, the cultural infrastructure is there to make a relatively lateral shift, because if you can grow hemp for wheat, if you can grow wheat, you can grow hemp. you're not going to grow flower that has to be hand-picked like wine grapes. And then there's a whole thing about some of the cultivars are being photo period sensitive in terms of flowering. The amount of daylight in the middle of the summer in Alaska differs a whole lot from Florida. And the farmers I work with in the Carolinas and the Southeast say, so here's my USDA zone and here's my last frost date. And by the way, you ask for my zip code, you now know the sunrise and sunset dates. And all of a sudden the rules of thumb about what flowers when for CBD cultivars, they were all bred in Colorado and Oregon. It's nothing like what you see in Florida, Mississippi, the Gulf states. So I think you're going to see some tendencies, whether we like it or not, about if you're going to grow grain and change over to hemp for food, you're in the Dakotas, you're in 4-H country. You're not going to grow that in Connecticut. You know, they don't grow wheat there. But, you know, it's going to be a compromise. And some parts of the country will never grow pot. You know, I mean, it just ain't going to happen.
That's good for us, though.
What's that?
That's good for us.
It is. It really is. And the other thing is, so I know a bunch of the breeders and seeders, and the genetic brain trust is concentrated in the places you would expect. Colorado, California, Oregon, and the rest of the world. You know, I mean, I've met breeders from mid-Atlantic states, but that's in the single digits. You can't spit and not hit somebody who's got genetics in the Emerald Triangle. But they're not genetic.
Thank you.
Anyway, so I don't have an answer. It's going to be worked out. And it also depends who fails in the hemp industry this year, unfortunately.
Anybody else have questions for Jerry? I agree. Your slides would have distracted from your very spirited presentation.
Well, thank you.
Good job.
I can say this is my first Zoom Cannabis Alliance meeting. I miss you guys so much.
We miss you too. We miss you too.
Before and after, you know, it'll come back.
Hey, Jerry, will you put your email address in the chat box?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, hold on.
Put your website from
Can you see my
LeBlanc.
screen
What's that?
now? You see my screen now?
No.
No, sorry. I can't.
Just
wait.
put your email and your website. There you go.
There it is.
There's Jerry's info. Fabulous.
Here, let me just.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you much.
And I miss seeing all of you guys as well. This is hard. We will eventually get there. I'm going to turn this over now to Kim. Kim is going to do the member pitches. So go for it, Kim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Ducote, and I miss seeing you all and getting hugs. Miss hugs a lot. So it's great to see such a good turnout. We had at least 40, if not more people on today. So this is our member spotlight moment. This is where we take a few minutes to listen to our members talk about their business for a few seconds so that we can learn a little bit more about what they're doing and network and build our community. So the first person I'd like to invite up is Trey Reckling with the Academy of Cannabis Science. So go ahead, Trey.
Hey, thanks, Kim. And I kind of feel like I'm preaching to the choir. I hope you all know what we do, but in case, my name is Trey Reckling. I'm with the Academy of Cannabis Science. We partnered with Seattle Central about 5 years ago. We were lucky enough to be the first program approved by the Department of Health to train medical marijuana consultants. So if you have a retail operation, we would love to talk to you about best preparing your consultants for their job or your bud tenders for their job. We have since helped the Seattle Central to develop their Cannabis Institute. And we have 10 classes right now that are active. Everything's online. And we've been fortunate enough to draw people well outside of Washington too. In fact, we have since partnered also with UNLV, or University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where we've been teaching classes over a year. And I'm happy to announce, and this is our first It's a little early, but it's coming on. We're going to partner with College of Charleston out of South Carolina also. So we will truly be coast to coast, and excited about that. Especially I grew up in South Carolina. I know how conservative it is and they need it. And so we're trying to shine some light in South Carolina. Jerry, I'll talk to you about that. Hopefully we introduce each other to some folks, but we're really happy about that. We also have had the opportunity to help, or I've personally had the opportunity to open 5 cannabis stores in 4 different states over the past couple years, from this coast over to Iowa and a couple places. And in addition to the courses we have, we're also working with, so we have students right here in this, we have Kristen and Vic, to name a couple people who have been students of ours, but we're happy to announce we're adding Cooking with Cannabis with Mary White. It's a class that'll go live very soon. Mary's been teaching in person for years, and so we're really happy to have her in the virtual environment. We'll also be adding a foundations class, Cannabis Professional in Spanish soon. And so we're really excited about that, and hope to be working with a member on that. And as soon as we have official word on that, we'll let you know. Also, Saturday Sesh is something we've started to do the first and third Saturday of every month, and we invite any of you to participate who would like to. We've been lucky enough to have Alliance members like Heather Dagley on. We've had Vanks Staffing Agency out of Colorado. We will have Danielle Rosellison on this Saturday. We're really excited to have Danielle talking about what she does. And then following Danielle, on June 6th, we'll have Andrew D'Angelo in to talk to us about the Last Prisoner Project and the work that he's doing to address our prisoners, and what can we do, what can our students do to be involved in that effort. So we're just really pleased. The Alliance has been essential, and y'all are family, and we wouldn't have been able to do this without you. We're really, really grateful. And so thanks for being our family. Thanks for supporting us, because y'all know how tough it is to run it. We are a family business. We don't have any outside investors. And so this is a family operation. So these organizations are essential, and we make sure that our students know that. And we send our students our way. So thanks for having us. Thanks for being part of our CannaFam, and thanks, Kim, for the spotlight.
Thank you, Trey. And you guys can find more information on the Academy of Cannabis Science by going to the cannabisalliance.us website, to the membership tab, and then toggle down to members of the Alliance. And then it'll take you to, just in the search engine, put in the Academy of Cannabis Science, and that'll take you to his profile and his link, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks, Trey. That was excellent. The next person I would like to invite to speak is Matthew Friedlander from Skagit Organics. Are you ready, Matthew?
I am, yes.
Hey, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me talk for a minute. I'm one of the owners of Skagit Organics. We are a processor-only company now, located just outside of Mount Vernon, so about an hour north of everyone there in Seattle. We have a full suite of products, flower products, infused joints and flower, vape carts, but our flagship and what we're known for is our RSO. So we specialize in food grade extraction. We use 190 proof food grade ethanol to do all of our extraction. There's no butane or CO2 or anything like that on the property that we use. We make all of our own oils, and we are pretty proud to have products that many from the medical community are still seeking out and using on a pretty regular basis. RSO is probably 80% of our revenue every month, just on that one product. I'll share my screen here real quick and show you all our website. Let's see if this will work here. There we go. All right. Excuse all the tabs. So this is the basic landing page for our site. We've got a little revamping to do. We're probably going to be dropping our topical line here. Here's our whole crew down here doing a little photo shoot. But like I said, our oils are the big thing that we're known for. We've got a couple different kinds of oil, or grades, I guess you could say. We make an original, which is your classic full plant extract. Lots of beneficial plant constituents in there alongside the cannabinoid profile. So you've got fats and waxes and a lot of chlorophyll that all have benefits on the medical side. We have our gold line here, little higher cannabinoid content, a little bit less plant material. And then our platinum line, which is really a distillate. So some people may not agree that that's a true RSO, but it does come from our gold line here. We do make it in-house, and then we do add in some cannabis strain profiles back into that to give us some flavor and help with the unique experience that terpenes provide through cannabis use. So we have a CBD line as well. Same thing, original gold and platinum. And then we also, for the more recreational side, we have our RSO branded as Bud Topper. This is the exact same oil that's in our RSO, just a little bit of a different look. Consumers can respond a little differently to that. We have recently also launched Northwest Natural Care. So this is our hemp CBD line, you know, below the 3.3% THC threshold. We are making this oil as well, so we're not buying, you know, CBD distillate from somewhere. This is all hemp that's been grown here in the U.S., doing the same organic ethanol extraction that we do on the THC side of things. So we're putting this into capsules and mixing it with either coconut oil or olive oil to get it down to the limits that we need to abide by. We've got, again, our original and our platinum. The original is going to be a 20 milligram capsule, and the platinum is a 30 milligram capsule. So obviously don't know how to navigate my own site here, but anyways, we've got, you know, 2 capsule packages and 5 capsules and 10. So you can kind of get a range if you want to try it out. There's a cheap option if you know what you like. You can get the 30 pack or the 60 pack in a bottle. I was going to bring up our other site as well, Skagit Apparel, but I can't get onto that. If anyone's interested in Skagit Organics apparel, you can purchase that at skagitapparel.com. So I will go ahead and stop this, and if anyone's got any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Matthew. I put the SkagitOrganics.net. You want to put your other links in the chat box? That would be
sure.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Find them on the cannabisalliance.us website under the membership tab too.
That's true. Thanks, Kim. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Just a couple things to wrap up with. We're trying to get some webinars together in June. We are moving our summit completely online because Germans cancel Oktoberfest. We figured we're probably not going to be able to meet in groups of more than 20 people. So we're going to we found a platform that we really feel is very interactive. It'll feel like we are in the hotel room together, except for it's going to have to be virtual hugs, obviously. We're going to be taking the webinars and showing you the platform using the webinars. So if you would like to give a webinar, just shoot me an email, but we're going to test those out in June with the other webinars, and I think you'll really like it. Several people are on the program today, and they can reemphasize about this platform. Maybe perhaps Trey and Caitlin can weigh in on the remote platform, or even Jill.
Yeah.
Not even Jill.
I'm excited for us to start utilizing it because it gives us all a lot more flexibility to be able to, you know, one of the things I miss the most about general meetings are the conversations before and after, right? And so this platform allows for that kind of flow to happen around our event and still allows some of that old school networking that we're used to on a digital platform. So I'm excited about utilizing it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little bit different at first, and we're going to have a little bit of a learning curve. And we could even, you know, depending on how people feel, we could have a pre-networking function before the next meeting just to check it out if it doesn't happen before the webinar. And of course, the next meeting is June 11th. We're trying really, really hard because you guys are family, and we do miss having those good conversations. And so the summit is all about those amazing conversations. And we're really excited about this year's summit. It is our opportunity actually to take some of our big ideas that we're developing as Washington State and being allowed to share it across the country around environment and building the ethical and sustainable cannabis community and cannabis industry. So this is really exciting for us, and we'll be announcing the lineup here very soon. But in the meantime, let's test out the platform. Let's see what you guys like about it. Let's all learn together. So awesome. Does anybody else have anything they want to announce? Unmute yourselves. And oh, don't forget our next happy hour is every Tuesday at 4 to 5, and it is just kind of nice to hang out and smoke a bowl.
I actually want to do a little bit of follow-up about elections, if that's okay. Just in case you haven't been around for elections, I did want to talk a little bit about the process. We currently have 3 positions that are open. And so everybody who's running is running for those 3 positions. And you'll fill out the form online, and then we will have, before elections, an opportunity for our membership to get to know each candidate, and that will be a small speech and then a little bit of a bio online. And then everybody will use their member code to vote, and we'll calculate those votes. So at this time, Norm Ives has decided not to seek another term on the board. So that position is open, as well as Nick Mosley. And then we had a board member leave, Rachel, and we voted in Jason Lammers to fill her position as a board, but now that decision needs to go to the membership with this round of elections. So Jason will be running again for the spot that he's kindly been filling for the last few months for us. Then once the board is elected, the board decides the positions like president and vice president and secretary treasurer, all of those things. And that's usually announced pretty shortly after our new board members are elected in. So I apologize for not going over that earlier, but just in case you haven't been through our elections process, I wanted to make sure that I covered that for you.
And I haven't, so thank you, Caitlin. It's all new to me too, so we're all learning together. We're absolutely learning together. Anybody else have any announcements? New products? Exciting stuff going on? All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jerry and Matthew and Mary for speaking, and David, who has since left the meeting. Let me know if you have questions about these things. We'll send another copy of the nominations out, as well as a ledge survey to members to remind them to vote. So thank you. Thank you all for coming.
If you were on happy hour, I wanted to show off my t-shirt from the story. This is from the Hash House in Las Vegas at MJ BizCon. It's a rosemary. They were t-shirts they were selling, and it says, "Don't smoke the garnish." I won't smoke any rosemary, but I'm going to encourage you all to smoke our favorite garnish as a main meal.
Definitely.
Anyway.
Or make focaccia out of it.
There you go.
It was eggs.
Bye.
Those eggs. Eggs are light. Oh, have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Have a good one.
Bye.
I always like to see who lingers towards the end.
Totally.
Yeah.
I also always have to remind myself that it's a two-step process to leave a meeting. So after the first click, still remember you're on camera.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
You have to confirm. Which is always funny.
All
Oh, I
right.
don't know if Laura was on for the end of the meeting or not.
She wasn't. She popped out early.
Did she? Okay. But I made sure she saw the shirt.
Oh, good.
So I am kind of excited about Remo because as we were having our meeting, I was thinking if we were going to do another Zoom, we should provide breakout rooms before and after. But it gets clunky because you have to admin moving people to each of those break rooms, right?
Right.
But with
I like
Remo,
that platform a
I'm
lot.
super excited to do the general meeting on that.
I just want to float from table to table. Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
You can hear what
That'll be
people
fun.
That's an interesting platform for sure. All right, I should probably get some work done today.
Yeah, I've got to get a kiddo on a Zoom.
Oh, fun.
Hi, guys.
All right, bye.